Claire Davis was only 17 in 2013 when a gunman shot and killed her in her school at Arapahoe High School in Centennial, Colorado. Now, I'm a former police officer and currently on the faculty at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And Sarah Goodrum and I, from the center, studied the shooting, and we found there were 27 missed opportunities that could have changed the course of events that led to her death. These failures included a failure to involve a school resource officer in the threat assessment process, a failure to include a teacher who had a positive relationship with the shooter in building a safety plan, and a failure to seize the shooter's computer when it was reported that he'd been viewing shootings at other schools online. Claire was the last Colorado shooting victim, and we at the University of Colorado Center for Study and Prevention of Violence, it's our goal that she remain the last shooting victim. Several years before she died, we went looking for simple programs that might solve this problem. And we looked at assemblies, we looked at pledges of nonviolence, and we looked at movies that people thought might solve this problem. But the shootings have not stopped, obviously, and we found not one simple program was ever proven to be effective. Not one. So we've not diagnosed this problem correctly because we want to believe that this is a simple problem, and so therefore it should have a simple solution. But as H.L. Mencken said back in the early 20th century, he's a political commentator, for every complex problem there is an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. Exactly. And so we've done a lousy job, really, of diagnosing this problem. We're trying to solve a complex problem with simple technical solutions. So, for example, we want to do more background checks. We want to arm our teachers. We want to put more police in the classroom. We want more mental health services. And we want more metal detectors. And then with each new shooting, we get a new technical solution to this problem. So after Parkland, what do? Clear backpacks, so we can see through those, And then after Santa Fe, let's just have one entrance to your school. This will solve the problem. I don't mean that these technical solutions are irrelevant or not part of an overall strategy. I just mean that they are not comprehensive alone. And human nature wants one of these simple solutions. It's just like with high blood pressure, for example. We want the pill that will reduce our blood pressure. But we're not interested in the comprehensive solution, maybe, that might require diet, might require exercise, might require stress reduction, maybe some mental health. So the technical solution is really only the tip of the iceberg. It barely touches the climate and culture of the organization. And when that climate and culture of the organization is sort of like in groupthink mode, where they believe they're the perfect school and therefore a shooting can't possibly happen there, or when they believe or want to ignore bad news, or when they have inadequate plans, then that's when the climate is disastrous. And that's when kids die. Children die. Children die. If you think about it, the truth is that real change requires time, effort, and a comprehensive look at the obstacles that get in the way of us doing this work. And it is hard work to prevent shootings because we have to figure out what is the best possible climate, positive school climate, for that particular school. And so in order to do this, we're going to have to adapt what's called adaptive leadership. Adaptive leadership requires a comprehensive diagnosis of the problem and solving them with purposeful programs and policies that we know are effective. Fortunately, a program we're implementing and evaluating now at the University of Colorado includes building a safe school climate, and it builds safe school climates. And so it's called Safe Communities, Safe Schools. And it promotes a comprehensive safe school climate which is designed to reduce future shootings. So it all started back in 2004 when the Secret Service, who was pretty good at looking at shootings of presidents, decided to take on school shootings. And they found that only a safe school climate would reduce the chances of a shooting. And they told us that in order to foster a safe school climate, that requires 7 tasks that we need to do. So task number 1 is to collect data. Very important to collect data and better understand what's going on in the school. In one school we were working with, the data came back and said 5% of the kids on the bus had seen weapons on the bus. In another school, we found that bullying was like twice as pervasive as they thought it was. And in a third, we found that 27% of the kids were likely to commit a violent act within the next year. So no school is really perfect, and we understand that. But schools must discover these blind spots and take advantage of them using formal surveys. So my question then to you is, what formal anonymous surveys are being used in your kid's school or in your school? Number 2 task, schools must take a strong stand against the code of silence. You know about the code of silence. That's when you're not going to tell on your friends, right? Well, they can be taught, and kids can be taught, that when a life is at stake, it is safe to tell. And safe to tell is our anonymous hotline in the state of Colorado. Other states have different ones, but last year that anonymous hotline received over 294 tips about planned school attacks. And many of them were actual attacks and many of them were thwarted. They also received over 1,700 tips on planned suicides, and many of those were actual plans, and many of those were actually thwarted by the tip line. So with tip lines, students and staff must be trained correctly. And when was the last time you had good training from PowerPoints and posters? Okay, that's not considered good training, right? Okay, no, it requires hands-on practice and scenarios being played out. And so as a result of that hands-on practice in the school since 2004, the number of tips have increased 90 times to last year. Over 9,000 tips were received by the Safe to Tell tip line. Third, additionally, schools must take on anti-bullying programs that are proven. Our Blueprints program has now looked at 1,400 programs nationwide and found only 80 that were proven effective. So in your kid's school, what program is being used and is it proven effective? 4, demand that active listening occur in your schools. Active listening is a lot more than just hearing something. Active listening is listening to the facts as well as the feelings of what's being said. At Arapahoe High School, nobody listened when the librarian told them that a student had threatened his life. He was scared to death. That's because he remembered at Columbine, a lot of the deaths occurred in the library. And sure enough, later that student did in fact attempt to kill him in his library. At Parkland, even the FBI didn't listen to the chorus of voices warning of the shooter's behavior. So are your administrators and your teachers and your schools good listeners? Can students and teachers tell their truths without getting in trouble? 5, multi-systemic community school planning is necessary. It has to include everyone, from the cooks to the cops, from the principals to the playground monitors. Without a multidisciplinary effort, we're destined to build more technical solutions. One of the most important dimensions of this planning is information sharing about high-risk youth. In 13 of the last 20 shootings where 3 or more kids died, since Columbine, unshared data could have made the difference in those shootings, especially at Arapahoe High School, at Parkland, at Virginia Tech. Failure to share led to missed opportunities to manage the shooter. So, for example, in Parkland, a teacher received a message that he was to report to the front office if a certain kid, who later turned out to be the shooter, came into his class with a backpack on. Now, if you were a teacher, what would you do with that? Yeah, he didn't know what to do with that. He had no information. The information about that kid was not being shared. This fear of sharing information is so bad that the Attorney General for the state of Colorado issued an official opinion recently that says that schools should err on the side of sharing that information. So if you and you and you and you are parents and you all have information of high-risk behavior of the same student, you should be talking to each other about that. Is that happening? Is that happening in your school? You need to know. You need to know. 6, positive relationships are critical. Sometimes loners are the shooters. So we need to ensure that a relationship is established between every adult and every student in the building. Some schools go to the extent of putting all the kids' name in a basket and then having all the teachers and adults pull out of the basket the names of the kids that they know. And then the names left in the basket are most likely the loners. And then those kids are proactively assigned to specific adults and specific teachers. So how does your school do it? 7, now these adaptive solutions need to be updated on a regular basis and audited frequently. You know what happens in a school when a new principal comes in, or a new assistant principal in charge of discipline? The climate and culture of the school change, and therefore these safe school plans need to be updated. How does your school do it? Your kids' school do it? Well, we're currently testing Safe Communities, Safe School in 44 schools in Colorado right now, and it's designed to incorporate these 7 tasks into that model. And we hope it will be expanded to other states and maybe nationally someday. But schools around the country must step up and adopt these principles and plans. And teachers and parents and all of you should be held accountable to ensure that they really happen. Only a safe school climate reduces the chance for school shootings. We cannot settle for the next technical fix. And I have to say that this is what I call hard work for me. Because my wife and I lost our child, not to a shooting, but those of you who've lost a child know how terrible that really is. So parents, know it is possible to have a safe school and ask to see your kids' safe school plan. and offer to help build one if necessary. We must do this for all the shooting victims and families who unwillingly made the ultimate sacrifice. We can end this epidemic together.